Start the recording. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday morning Dharma talk. I hope that you used your extra hour profitably. I got up early. This morning, our speaker is Reverend Myo-O Habermas-Scher. She practiced with Katagiri Roshi from 1975 until his death in 1990. She also trained for 12 years in the Vipassana tradition. She received Dharma transmission in 2012 from Dokai at Hokyoji. Myo-O is a master movement teacher and teaches somatically based vocal training. In 2021, she retired after 14 years as interfaith staff chaplain at the University of Minnesota Medical Center, MHealth Fairview. She's also a mom and a grandmother with 2 little grandsons. So, Myo, thank you for your talk this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm hearing, you hear that? Okay, now I don't hear it. Okay, all right, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. Oh, wow, John, okay. Anyway, it's just us. Hi. Hi, Dokai. I thought you were on the train.
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday, okay. Okay. I'm gonna give myself a little more light here. All right. So, I've been preparing for Rohatsu with Kyoku. And I've been thinking about the Buddha's life because that's the focus of the Rohatsu Sesshin. So today I just got interested in his actual process because that's what we're doing. We're in a process of continuously awakening. So I've been reading a lot of different things, and one thing I was reading was Karen Armstrong's book, Buddha, because she's a really great scholar and she writes in a way that's easy to absorb. So I'm going to give you a lot of context today. But the first thing I want to say is today, this very day, is the 31st anniversary of my mom's unexpected death at the age of 64. So that struck me. She ate some fry bread at a Hopi village in New Mexico and got a Shigella bacterial infection, which led to thrombocytopenic purpura, and she died in an ICU in California. And she had been, basically healthy with good habits of exercise and, diet and all that stuff. So it was just that sort of a loss multiplied by 10 million that set Gautama Siddhartha on his journey of leaving home, his family, his pleasant life at the age of 29, in order to deeply understand this life, which is filled with suffering and loss, and most importantly, he wanted to see what could be done about it. So as I was studying about the causes and conditions around him that set this in motion, I thought of myself in the 60s, and there were a lot of us who we wanted to see what could be done about it. I don't know how far we've gotten. But because of the causes and conditions that set Gautama in motion, we're here on this Sunday morning together to consider that. So first I want to offer this honoring. And if you know this chant, please go ahead and do it with me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And that means honor to the Blessed One, the Exalted One, the fully enlightened one. So the Buddha's life started off with a huge loss, although he was too little to consciously know about it. His mother, Queen Maya, died a week after he was born, and he was raised by his aunt, you probably all know this, Mahapajapati, who later became his first female disciple, and that's a whole story that we're not going to talk about today. Also, I noted that Dogen's mother died when he was 6 years old. And it's said that that influenced his receptivity to the spiritual life when he was a kid. So immediately upon being born, there's already a deep personal loss for Gautama. You know, even though not consciously known by him, it's there. And I believe it's known kind of on a cellular level. And at the time of his birth and his growing up, there was a fascinating political and social landscape that was fomenting during his life. So he, as we know, was a member of the Sakya tribe living in the north of the Ganges Valley, where his father was the king of his small kingdom. And because they were so far north, they missed out on the invasion of the Aryans from Central Asia. And those guys brought with them a system of 4 castes and a rigid social hierarchical system. At that time, it started to be that these adjoining kingdoms of Kosala and Magadha started to become more efficient and streamlined and bureaucratic. Does this sound familiar? More than where Kapilavatthu, where Gautama was growing up, that hadn't hit them so much, but that was going on around. And the merchants and the bankers were starting to have a lot of influence and were kind of ruthless in their business practices. And the Brahmins were kind of their rituals and their magical ceremonies. People were starting to notice, this isn't really working. People are still dying. We're still poor. We still have no agency. And the traditional values of the Sakyas were starting to crumble. And the new order was stressing people out. So cities were mobile, and the old rituals didn't work in the new world order. So people were very unsettled. Now, I think, goodness gracious, this sounds very, very familiar to me. That's interesting. Professor Armstrong called the conditions of this time the axial age. So that was interesting to me too, because that means that there was a lot of unrest and people searching in various, I think she named China and India, and I can't remember, but you can look it up in her book. Her book is called Buddha, so it's easy to remember. So people in northern India started experimenting with new religious ideas that seemed to address their distress more directly. And then I didn't know this, but the Upanishads were kind of like the secret teaching that was arising at this time. Interiority, which led to interiority. So it was being born and affirmed, and ordinary people were starting to look towards it somewhat. So it was thought that salvation could be found within, because the immanent presence of Brahman pervaded everything that lived and breathed. So this is also not an unusual thought to me. In the eastern Gangetic Valley, there were a gang of, I'm going to call them this, a gang of mendicants, like lots of mendicants going around, who were actively exploring the possibility of accessing the eternal immanent principle themselves. Personal liberation was a thing, and the community counted on these people to bring the way to be free back to the people. And they were actually honored as rebels. Now that's a little different. So when Gautama left his home to join them, there was already a web of support for his sojourn and his intense dedication to see it all the way through. He was not out there alone in the forest. So I think that's kind of interesting that the people were suffering, and they had some kind of recognition or faith in these mostly young men, but not entirely, people who were looking for a way through, or to be free, or to understand a way to not suffer as much, or understand the suffering. And they supported these mendicants, which is not the case. I think is not so much the case in my experience in life. So I could say right now that things are a mess. That's what I feel. Greed and aversion are rampant. Even the earth herself is rebelling against the ignorance and blindness that is having its natural negative consequences. And we're using each other and all living things like utilities. I heard Larry Ward the other night at Minnesota Zen Meditation Center, and he talked about waking down, because usually you say, let's wake up. But he talked about waking down, which I quite liked. So it's like waking down to the first noble truth. Yeah, it is. It's really like this. There's a lot of suffering going on around here. And there's an election right around the corner, and there's a lot of on my email. There's a lot of this going on. And oppressive regimes seem to be getting foothold all over the world. It's wild. But anyway, here we are. And we're looking directly at this mess together. And I want to say, that's not nothing. That's something. So if we can see ourselves in Buddha's story, I think that's confirming for us and helpful. If we couldn't, we might be reaching just for the romance of the East, or the romance of the archetypal character of the Buddha. And on the other hand, I want to say there is this kind of archetypal energy in us when we take up the thread of this practice of restraint that holds the intensity of the range of suffering or even trauma that we may each know personally. So when we enter the container of sesshin, there's all this formality in our tradition. For instance, normally I wear 3 continents of robes: Japan, China, and India. On the one hand, some people, people think us just silly. But on the other hand, it could be giving some help and support to help me embody this quest by becoming the archetype of the seeker, moving from my Hungarian or whatever personality into a beautiful and noble restraint. And everyone, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody here has that experience. So just bowing and sitting down is the way, is entering the way. So how do we treat ourselves when we stop and allow the built-up confusion and twisted karma of our lives to rise up to where it can be seen? I think of Gautama, who was a young man. He was well fed, well cared for when he left, and had a lot of energy. And right away, he set out to master meditation techniques. He was taught with everything he had. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So I've been reading a lot in this well-worn book, The Life of the Buddha by Bhikkhu Nanamoli. I don't know if you guys have this book. It's a little hard to read, but the premise is that people, the Buddha himself wasn't too interested in his own history. And so these wonderful scholars tried to look in all the Nikayas and put together a history of his life so we could have a sense of what happened. So it's very, very interesting for that reason. But at any rate, he tried lots of things and he worked really, really hard. For instance, in one instance, he tried subduing his mind with his teeth clenched, and quote, "I crushed my mind with my mind." Crushed being the operative word. Then he tried not breathing. Then he tried so many different things. He tried practicing 15 ways from Friday, and he concluded, even though he had done all this stuff, my body, yet my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful effort. And following all these experiments, which I thought was great. He was experimenting, right? He realized this. But by this grueling penance, I have attained no distinction higher than the human state, worthy of the noble one's knowledge and vision. Might there be another way to enlightenment? Now, have you ever gotten to that place where you just completely whacked yourself out by trying so hard? I mean, was that has it been fruitful? I'm just wondering, we're all in this experiment. It's a project, right? So, wondering where that led you. I'll tell you where it led the Buddha, which I love. And if I get it together, I can show you this picture that Jushin kindly gave me instructions for how to do, but we'll see if I can. So what happened was he had a memory of a time when he was sitting under the rose apple tree one spring and his father was plowing the spring fields. Okay, so now I'm going to see if I can, let me just see now. This might take a moment. Oh, there's the picture. Okay, now I go to share screen. Jushin, you can come in here and tell me what to do. Then then I go to this. Is that what I do? And then I go share. Ha ha ha! It worked. Okay, there's the Buddha, the little guy. He's about 7. He's sitting under the rose apple tree, and his father's and they're having the spring festival. So everybody's, around plowing and hanging out, but he's just resting under this tree. And it's, that feeling of resting under a tree, and the conditions are not too hot, not too cold. The bugs aren't biting you. There's a little breeze, and you're in the shade, and you don't have to do anything. So that's what happened. There's the picture. Okay, now I'm supposed to go to stop share. It worked! Oh my God! That's the first time, you guys, that I have ever shared my screen. So thank you, Jushin. Okay. So he talked about remembering this, but he further made a distinction between wholesome pleasure and unwholesome pleasure. And he decided, well, this is wholesome pleasure. It's not going to lead to unwholesome states. So this was actually a stunning shock to him. This is okay. It's okay to have some balance in the practice. So he broke his own rules with his buddies. He ate something. He went to a graveyard and he found some cloth, and then he went to the river, Naranza something river, and he bathed, he washed the cloth, and then he sat down. So what struck me while I was studying was it said that this moving into balance is what presaged his fulfillment. Because after that, his meditation really took off. So I would like to stop here and just wonder for ourselves what the rose apple tree is for us. Where is that place of wholesome, balanced effort? So the rose apple is pleasant in a mindful way. And the Buddha was aware, I can handle this pleasantness. I'm not going to space out. I can just be here. And I'll tell a story of myself. I was working at some point in my practice. I was working so hard, making so much effort that I felt like a mosquito trying to dive through an iron helmet. It was just like this. And I was hopeless. And then one of my teachers told me to be a cabbage. Just be a cabbage in the garden, which I had no idea how to do. So I spent the next couple of years, instead of sitting on my cushion, I sat on the couch at the back of the hall and held my cushion in my arms so that I was very relaxed. And that's all I did. I was a complete failure. I wasn't sitting with my friends who are, I don't know, having deep whatever. I was just sitting there, at this iron helmet. But it was very helpful, very, very helpful. So I want to move from that encouragement to logic. The Buddha was a seeker, but he was a researcher. He was doing research. And I'm sure he was very, very educated at that time. And I know from other readings and past exposure that when I read the translation of the Nikayas, there was a special way of speaking and analyzing at that time in India. And, I'm going to actually look. And so in the Nikayas, Gautama is purported to think like this on page 15. Okay, just a sec. Let me find it, because I just love the language. All right, now let me see. Where did I? Holy night. Okay, oh, holy night. Okay, so this is how he's talking to himself. I thought, but there are specially holy nights of the half moons of the 14th and the 15th and the quarter moon of the 8th. Suppose I spent those nights in such awe-inspiring abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines, which make the hair stand up. Perhaps I should encounter that fear and dread. So I'm taking this out of context. So he's talking to himself, why do I dwell in constant expectation of the fear and dread? Why not subdue that fear and dread while maintaining the posture I am in when it comes to me? So he's figuring out his own pathway. Well, okay, that didn't work. Let me try this. And then he gets the results of that experiment, and then he says, wait, let me try this. So that's how it goes on all the way through. I wrote that he's enacting on himself to prove or not to prove to himself that there's truly a way to live with things the way they are without destroying the body, the mind, or things. So I think we are too, aren't we? Experimenting on ourselves to refine the art form. I think of it as an art form, not being a scientist, of seeing clearly how things are. The Buddha offered his life and his teachings, but he never purported to be magical or separate from ordinary life, which was not the way people were talking about it at that time. He had a lot of confidence. That was part of his causes and conditions, and he was young, so he had a lot of energy. So towards the end of his research, let me see this, he explains his awakening using the same sort of language, and he formulates his questions, not only asking what causes suffering to arise. So this is the 12-link chain of causation I finally figured out. So he's not only asking what causes it to arise, which I don't know about you, but I'm always making up a story about what's causing my suffering at the present moment. He also asks, what's the requisite condition for the cessation of birth, aging, death, and becoming? And he reverses the 12-link chain of causation that begins with ignorance and ends with old age and death. So I went online, and I don't know if this guy's the real deal or not, but anyway, this is what I found. So you can see there's a list. We've all seen these lists. So there's a list. And I just love that he's can be so clear. I have attained the following path to awakening. So this is his logic. From the cessation of name and form comes the cessation of consciousness. From the cessation of consciousness comes the cessation of name and form. From the cessation of name and form comes the cessation of the 6 sense doors. I'll just say that. From the cessation of the 6 sense doors comes the cessation of contact. From the cessation of contact comes the cessation of feeling. From the cessation of feeling comes the cessation of craving. From the cessation of craving comes the cessation of clinging and maintaining. From the cessation of clinging and maintaining comes the cessation of becoming. From the cessation of becoming comes the cessation of birth. From the cessation of birth, then aging, death, sorrow, regret, pain, distress, and despair all cease. This is the cessation of the entire mass of stress. Vision arose, understanding arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose, illuminating insight arose within me with regard to things never known before. He's not shy. In a poem that's in this book about a confrontation with Mara, not the last one, there were several, he tells Mara, I will break your Sarah squadrons with understanding, not with fighting. That's radical. Like he already planned on it. This is like before he started eating. I will break through with understanding. That seems so powerful to me. I will break through with understanding. So not with fighting externally, not with fighting internally, but understanding. I'm supposed to read you something on page 26. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, and so this is how he says the same thing in this book. Then with ordered attention, I came to understand when there is no birth, no aging, and death come to be, with cessation of birth, there is cessation of aging and death. And then he goes through this, the whole list, which I just read you. And then he says, I thought, what is not there when no consciousness comes to be? With cessation of what is there, with cessation of what is there, cessation of consciousness. Then with ordered attention I came to understand. When there is no name and form, no consciousness comes to be. With cessation of name and form, there is cessation of consciousness. I thought, this is the path to enlightenment that I have now reached. So just that clarity kind of blew my mind. And also not just the clarity, but the reverse question. Well, what happens when there's cessation? With cessation of what is there cessation of consciousness? That's the question. The clarity and simplicity of his logic, based on the felt, known, subtle sense related to each question, is so impeccable. Now, I don't have a mind like Buddha, like that operational clarity and logic. That's not my strength. I appreciate it, but it's not my strength. And yet still, I have a strong confidence that seeing clearly leads to this rest. So in conclusion, I'm just going to pull out some happy verses from our own tradition. So this is from Fukan Zazengi. The sitting practice I speak of is not learning meditation. It is simply the gate of repose and bliss, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. Learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly. That's the line in particular that struck me. And then from the Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage, she too, turn the light to shine within, then just return. The vast, inconceivable source can't be faced or turned away from. Meet the ancestral teachers, be familiar with their instruction, bind grasses and build a hut, and don't give up. Let go of hundreds of years of karma and relax completely. Open your hands and walk, innocent. Thousands of words, myriad interpretations are only to free you from obstructions. If you want to know the undying person in the hut, don't separate from this skin bag, here and now. So that's all I gotta say today. But I sure would love to hear from you. Don't be shy. Whatever you want to say. We all want to hear you. Please, yeah, just unmute yourself, Jim.
Yeah, I had to figure out how to hit the button. Thanks for your talk, It was really good. I'm familiar with Karen Armstrong, and she's got a new book she just published on sacred nature, where she kind of goes in. I haven't read it yet. I got it, but it kind of brought to mind when you were talking about the Buddha sitting under the rosewood tree, and I spent a lot of time the last year amongst the trees, living here in Iowa City, and I find myself sitting under trees quite a bit and laying under trees. So I kind of could relate to that a little bit for being out in nature and seeing everything that goes on. I was outside yesterday actually working, and it was raining. And it was cold and miserable, but I've got all these little trees I have to get planted. So it changes from day to day, but I'm very excited about reading her book and kind of getting her whole take on, the different religions' relationship to nature. But thank you so much. It was good to hear your voice this morning.
It's good to see you, Jim. Really good. Kikan-san.
Hi, Myo-O-san.
Hi.
Hi. You talked about Bukan Zazengi toward the end there. I'm curious, what would you say taking the backward step means?
That's good. Yeah, I'm kind of really into it these days. What I notice in my life, like if I'm not, and I'm going to say this in a metaphorical way, sequestering myself, not like actually sequestering myself, but you know what I mean, that I will lead from the front like this, like I'm like, oh, I need to, okay, I got to go get the laundry out. Oh, what are the cats doing? Oh, they threw up. Oh, like, where's okay, I need to make my list. I need to study. No, I can't talk to anyone during this time, on my calendar. And when I come out of retreat where I've been not doing that, I can really feel the difference. It's a felt sense in my body, in my nervous system. It's not a thought. It's literally like how my connective tissue is organizing itself. And so sometimes in my ordinary life, I say, whoa, like, hold on a minute. Like, step back. It's not like I'm looking for insight or, trying to do something, but just simply just to make that to actually make a shift in how I am wearing my body, my perception, my perceptive system, all of that. It's just a shift from here to here. And I go, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? I say to myself. And also, it's just noticeable how exhausted I make myself from leading from the front. I mean, we could say a billion things about that. We all know. We've all studied a long time, blah, blah. But just noticing that and going, sit back. And like when someone's talking to me, I really try to like my eyes back without a big story about that even, but just it's like a dance, like physically shifting. So that's one thing that I think about when I say learn the backward step. It's an actual thing for me. It's not like a theory or anything like that. Does that make sense, Kikan? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm muted. You.
Someone else was saying something?
No, you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll go ahead. Well, congratulations on sharing screen. For me, it happened a few weeks ago, less than 2 months. Only due to the help of Alex. He helped me for like an hour and a half trying to figure out how to do it. And we practiced it because it was critical. I was giving a financial report to the SCBA, and you just can't say, yeah, well, there's $25,000 here and there's $15,000 there, and there's, no one's going to grasp it if you don't see the numbers. So if I couldn't do that, I was sunk. But it worked without a hitch. So I felt good about that. And when you were doing it today, I thought, do I remember how to do it? No, I don't think so, because I haven't done it since. So anyway, it's just a thing. So congratulations. My another comment I have is that I check my emails every day, and I used to subscribe to the New York Times, and I don't anymore. But all I do is I can see the headlines, but I can't actually read the stories because they say you need to have a subscription or something. So today I just saw some article on the number one article was, people do not respond to logic. Yes. Yes.
I saw that. Yeah.
You can have a criminal,
Yeah.
be a candidate for something, but if they love the person, they're just not going to look at the facts somehow or another. And just look at our own lives. Sometimes, logic says do this, and we just don't do it. So anyway, that was just a small point. Here's another point. One Sunday, I was doing a lecture at Clouds and Water, and I was talking from a sutta. I don't remember the name of it, but the Buddha said, develop a mind that is like the earth. Mm-hmm. And he said, the earth doesn't care what you throw upon it. You throw garbage, this, that, the other thing. The earth accepts everything. And so develop something like that, that you just can receive anything that's thrown at you or given to you. And then someone in the assembly said, I don't agree with you, Dokai. The earth reacts to what you throw on it. And so I'll just throw this out there, that I think we care about the earth because we care about ourselves. It's like if the earth gets unsustainable for human beings, that bothers us. On the other hand, I don't think the earth is a personality. So still, it's just going to accept whether we continue or not. The earth really isn't too interested in that. So that's just a perspective I have. Of course, I think I've read that so many billions of years from now, the earth's going to get swallowed up by the sun. So I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway. So anyway, I just hold that in my mind. It's not that I don't think we should do something, because I think, most of us want human beings to survive for far beyond our lifetimes. Then another comment I have is, you mentioned the fourth sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya is fear and dread, which is, I don't know the Pali term, but it's always been one of my favorites. And especially that line where Buddha says, why do I always dwell expecting fear and dread to come upon me? And that really kind of helped me assimilate things, because of course he said this was before his enlightenment. Before my enlightenment, he says, what did I always dwell expecting fear and dread to come upon me? But I said, wow, the Buddha actually said that, or he admitted that. So that's good news for me. So anyway, and then the other thing about that sutta that really is encouraging to me, that when he said, when this fear and dread comes upon me, if I'm sitting, I'm just going to continue to sit. If I'm walking, I'm going to continue to walk. And if I'm lying down, I'm just going to continue to lie down. And if I'm, whatever the other one, stand, walk, lying down, sit, whatever you're doing, you're just going to continue the same motion. And the reason I appreciate that so much is, if we examine our own behavior, if fear and dread come upon us, we change. Our immediate reaction is to change whatever we're doing physically. If I'm lying down in bed, fear and dread comes upon me, I sit up. If I'm sitting, fear and dread comes upon me, I stand up. If I'm standing, fear and dread comes upon me, I start walking or moving. And if I'm walking and fear and dread comes upon me, I stop. So it's like we're thinking by changing our physical position that we're actually going to get rid of this fear and dread. So that's why I really appreciate that whatever he was doing, and I think it's a metaphor, whatever he was doing when this fear and dread came upon him, he would just continue to face it. I think that's a metaphor for that. So thank you for bringing that up. And the last comment is the line about being at ease in Zazen. I think some of us have this experience that we've changed translations, in our suttas in recent years, and I learned, something the first way, and I'm always kind of partial to the first way I learned it. So I think I remember it as saying, sitting Zazen is just the Dharma gate of joyful ease. So that's where I will conclude my comments. So thank you, Myo.
Thank you, Dokai. Yes, Jushin-san.
Good morning. Thank you for your talk. I have, I guess, an interesting question, well, to me, maybe not to anyone else, as thinking about how you started. So the theory of the axial age is due to Karl Jaspers, and the people you left out were the Greeks and Romans, and the Holy Land, the Levant. So the Abrahamic religions as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you mentioned the Aryans coming into the north of India, and
Well,
we
they
can.
they didn't. They came. They didn't come in the north. They came. Well. Anyway, you can talk to Karen Armstrong.
Yeah,
Just telling you
yeah.
what she said. That they kind of skipped the Sakyas and they came, according to her, they came.
They were more in the West. They didn't make it that far, but those ideas were certainly starting to come through trade. I get the more important question I have is that eventually those ideas won the day. When by the time we get the Mauritanians, eventually Ashoka, the first unification of India, but eventually, Brahmanism becomes Hinduism, and sort of the I don't know how to put it. The magical thinking way seems to always be winning, and aside from a cultural lesson, is there a personal lesson for that?
And how is that for you, Jushin?
Well, it's hard to So what we might think of is the magical thinking as falling into ideologies and philosophies uh, and not necessarily dealing with just what is happening. The stories and tribes that we fall into, but.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if that's a personal question for you. That's what interests me.
No, I just thought of it. So I generally think of, the historical sweep is interesting because, Buddhism comes to Japan because they think they have better spells. But I just had the thought after you mentioned it and said, well, I wonder if there's also a personal lesson there. And
Well,
and
that's
then
the question. That's the question.
Right. So I guess my answer is perhaps. Perhaps it is true. Falling into ideologies and different camps and stuff is our version of magical thinking. I don't know why my microphone is causing feedback today, but I'm sorry. I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah. Well, I guess I want to say something a little bit radical. I hope. I mean, I hope you guys will forgive me for this, but I don't think that that shamanic work is utterly without effect either. So, and it shows up in Bon and in the Tibetan traditions and in lots of traditions. So I don't think it's entirely without effect, but does it lead to liberation? That's the question. Does it really deeply, completely answer whatever my research question is, my quest of my heart and being? So there's nothing wrong with it, really. Nothing wrong. But is it truly helpful for what I'm trying to accomplish? That's the question. Not I, meaning each of us. And I don't say, don't ever do that. Don't sing into your chakras. I mean, I sing to people and I do healings with people using my voice. And I have for almost 30 years at Pathways here in Minneapolis. It's a complimentary healing support center. It's all free. And so I'm doing that. It's totally shamanic what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but it's not bad. People are helped. And how are they helped? They're helped to sit under the rose apple tree for a moment. Like there's some ease, there's some release, there's some reorganization in the nervous system. It's momentary, of course, But relief isn't something I don't think we should throw out in the garbage. And even the Buddha says, hey, relief is, presaged my awakening. So that's notable to me. Anyway, hope that's useful, Jushin.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mary.
Myo-O, I first want to say that your comment just now about working at Pathways and singing for people, every time I listen to you, I think most every time you do sing, you sing something, and my heart with your singing, I mean, I can't even. It just opens.
Oh.
And and I weep. And usually it's it's transitory, but even talking about it right now, I didn't know what you sang. It didn't matter that I didn't know the words. I didn't know what they meant in English. So I really thank you. Thank you. That's a gift that you have and that you share, and it opens my heart. So that's my first comment. There was a word that you said during your Dharma talk.
Yeah.
That just hit me, because Judeo-Christian words, religious words, often hit me, in fact, kind of take me off track a bit. It's jarring. And you said the word penance.
Oh.
So I would just like you to just say anything you want about penance. I mean, I may be totally, I'm missing the point on everything I was, but I just, exhausted by the painful effort and penance. Those were these two things that you said together. So
yeah, I was quoting one of the Nikayas, and I mean, this is how I think of it. I don't know if this is correct, but I think of it like he got to this place whereby hurting and beating up his bodily functions, he realized this experiment's not working. It's not getting me to where I want to go at all. So that penance of in the olden days, I hear that monks used to, beat themselves with whatever those things were. I forget what they're called. He's basically saying that's not it. Like, just the fear and dread that naturally come up are just fine. Like, I don't need to push it. Like, that's not taking the backward step. That's taking the forward step. I am going to get there, and I don't care if I don't eat, I don't breathe. He's tried not breathing, and and I'm filthy, and bugs are all over me, and like he tried that penance, and it did not lead to what he was interested in. So I can only kind of mouth what we know of, what we have, of what the Buddha said his research project was about. So for him, that was not being held. It wasn't even leading to, forgiveness and ease and release and acknowledging karma. Like, he couldn't do any of those things because he was so sick. And I've been sick all week, and I just am like, wow, I'm going to really appreciate it when I feel better. Because it's really hard to, stay steady and do the work when you feel like crap. So I don't know, Mary, does that help? Or
that does help. In the tradition I grew up in, we you would say penance. You would say 3 Our Fathers, 4 Hail Marys, that was sort of the recipe for release or forgiveness.
Yeah.
And actually, as a kid, for me, that worked.
Yeah, for sure.
It didn't work so well as I got older, but that has a lot of weight. So I thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I just want to lift up what you just said, that when I was a child, it worked, meaning you had a sense of ease and peace when you said that, like, oh, I hit my little brother. Okay, say 4 Hail Marys. But, it eased your heart. You felt like you were in harmony again with your family. That's not nothing. And that place of harmony is still within you, and you can use it as a resource however you choose to. No, that's what came to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. That's time. Thank
Hey.
you, Myo-O, for your talk this morning.
Welcome.
I wanted to start out by, and I forgot saying that this is November. This is the first talk of November. So this is our first speaker for November. Next weekend, we will have Deacon Michael Howard, followed by yours truly. And then the last Sunday in November will be Shoto Spring. We have currently started. Donations are very important to Hokyoji's operation, and we have started one of our 2 big main fundraising events. Give Min started November 1st, which culminates on November 17th with Give to the Max. And we have a great matching grant in effect right now. We're hoping to raise a total of $15,000. Next weekend, my math. November 18th to the 20th, no, that would be 2 weekends, is the work weekend, if you'd like to contribute in another way at Hokyoji, followed by Myo-O and Kyoku. Well, at the beginning of December 3rd to the 10th, we'll do Rohatsu. And if you're one of those who likes to plan very far in advance, the winter practice period starts January 30th. So again, thank you everybody for attending. And let's close out with the 4 vows. Do you want to lead us, Myo-O? Because my microphone's kind of janky.
Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Somebody jump in if I screw it up.
Beings are numberless.
Beings are numberless.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.